Okay, so now we have everything set up. You have Motec working, you're getting your data from iRacing, and you have the Mia exporter. So we're already past the first step, and now it's learning how to use it. So that's stage 2 of this video. So as you can see, Motec comes with a pretty cool bit of default data, but it looks cool at first glance, but are issues with it. First of all, you'll notice that the steering angle is not being shown, and that also this is set up for real life racing, for real cars with real sensors, and some of these sensors don't translate to iRacing. We don't have them, especially engine related stuff. Like here you'll see differential oil temperature. You also see some lambda stuff. So this is not really finely tuned for iRacing. It's very basic and it's very nice defaults, but in reality what you want to do is you want to make your own workbooks. So first, I guess what you want to do is maybe delete the workbook. The workbook is just this layout editor. Layout editor is basically a little bit of a tree of everything that you're seeing here, all the options. So right now we're in the driver, so that's this workbook, and then you have these worksheets within it, which are the sub tabs within it. So here you can make new ones, and let's go ahead and driver general. Well, I don't really want to make a new one per se, but if this was blank, then that's the way that you would do it. You would add a workbook, name it, let's say Aero, because you want to make one that's exclusively for aerodynamic stuff. And then this one, let's say it's going to be brake. That's your worksheet. We're going to add another worksheet that's going to say well, we already have rake. What else could you have? Ride height versus speed. I'm just making up stuff right now. So there you see how you would do it. I mean, you could add another workbook, fuel, even though I think we already have one that's for that, and then new worksheets. So you get the idea. You can import and export, so that's the case where maybe you downloaded something from somebody. You could also just drop it in. There's different ways of going about it. But what I want to do is I want to go to drivers. Usually, I think the first thing that you should use the telemetry or the data logging stuff for is for driver analysis. Definitely improving your own performance comes number 1, and then after that, developing the car setup. That is, I think, the secondary gain from the data. So we'll first set up a driver sheet, and that comes to, I guess, the methodology of it. Let's talk for a second about how I go about this. The pitfall or the big issue with looking at data is data overload. So the first pitfall of, thank you Justin for your text messages. The first pitfall is data overload. Basically, you have all these worksheets and all these graphs, and you'll spend forever looking at them and learn almost nothing. So that's the biggest reason why I don't like downloading other people's workbooks or looking at things that are already presented for you, because sometimes they don't exactly make sense. Like they don't, especially complicated ones. I mean, braking, yeah, that's simple. Everybody can get that. But there's a lot of cool, tricky stuff that one can do, and it may not be clear what the intent is of the person that made it. And then that's where you kind of get sucked into, well, I'm looking at the lines and I kind of see a difference, but maybe you're misinterpreting what the point of it is. So really, you kind of have to create your own workbooks. And once you learn how to do it, I think you'll gain a lot of confidence and you'll really make your data analysis a lot more efficient. Because at the end of the day, what you want to be able to do is log all your data And every time that you leave a practice session, maybe not every time, but very quickly, within a few minutes, look at the data, find a couple points that in your driving that you want to fix, or a couple little things that you're noticing that maybe could be optimized. And then what you want to do is go back on track and everything. You want to make it very efficient. Normally I can go and look at data in less than 5 minutes and have, a small list of maybe 4 or 5 points of what I want to work on. So that's really how you want to do it. Later on, then you start looking at setup. Maybe you can spend a little bit more time on it, but efficiency is definitely key. There's no sense in wasting all day looking at the graphs. There's not going to be that much of a gain for it, and then it also kind of ends up deterring you from using it, and that's definitely not the idea. You definitely want to be adding to your experience in iRacing. So let's go ahead and set up a workbook for a driver. So what do I want to look at? Well, so first let's look at the options. So I cleared out the screen. Now there's nothing here in this worksheet. So we have a blank slate. So then what you do is you go to right click, say add, and then you have different options. Time distance graph, outing graph, color graph, histogram, suspension histogram, scatter plot, mixture map, FFT, video, I've never used, track reports, and channel reports, and then gauges. A lot of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and start. Normally, I think I would like to definitely add a couple graphs, time distance graphs. We're gonna add a group. The groups are the separations of the graphs. So let's go ahead and add corrected speed. I usually like to look at that at the top of my graph. And then I want to separate that and then make a throttle. We're going to look for throttle position. Oh, by the way, you can also, so this is how I do it quickly to find the channels that I'm looking for. Here you see, okay. Well, here on the right you see all the channels that are available in Motec. Not in Motec. This is all the channels that are being exported by iRacing. So you have all of these channels. This is all the data that you have to play with. So let's go back to edit now. So here I made the graph so far, and you see the corrected speed is being displayed, and then the throttle position is being displayed. I'm not done. I'm still working on it. So we're gonna right click on the plot, and we're gonna go to properties. We're gonna add channel, and then if I delete that, then I have the entire list, the same list that I showed on the right. But you can use this search box here and you can find stuff much easier. So we'll type in brake, and let's go with brake pedal position. Brake and brake pedal position will probably be identical. That's one thing that I've noticed over the couple of years where they've been adding more and more channels is sometimes the channel name changes, or they've been adding channel changes, and like the names have been changing, I guess. And so some of them are kind of redundant. So, but that's not important. So then we're going to separate and make another group for steering wheel angle. That sounds good. And what else do I want to look at? And then we're going to add another group, and we're going to add some accelerometers. So let's say lateral. Oop. Let's see, G-force lat, yes. Let's go G-force lateral, and we'll add one more. And they call them G, right? So G long, G-force long. Cool. There we go. So now we have our data, and we're displaying useful information that I want to see. Here's my speed. You can get the bars here, and you can mess around with that a little bit, and you can see. You can set it up how you like. You can also make this larger or smaller by dragging on the window, so we can add more stuff to this. Cool. So now I move it over. I have more room. We're displaying everything I want to see. That looks good. If you want to look at something a little bit more closely, you can double click on the line, and then that will let me right there. I click it there, and now we're looking specifically at Here at the top of the bar, you can see the entire run. So this is your out lap, lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, lap 4. We're in lap 5. We're looking at lap 5, and we're looking at this section here of lap 5. That's around turn 3. And you can see here we also have like a little bit of a window. So that's going into the bus stop chicane. And you can see my braking and trailing off. You can see that the gradual turn in that I'm making, and not a lot of steering angle being put into it, and then a lot coming back the other way at the other top spot on the bus stop. Looks like a pretty good lap. So yeah, that looks good. Let's go ahead and add some more stuff to this. I mean, what other things would be important if I want to have a one-stop shop of like what I want to see data-wise as to how I'm driving? Well, let's add a gauge perhaps. I want to know what gear I'm in. So let's see, numeric gauge would be a good one. Like, I don't need to see a graph of my gear. I just want to know what gear I'm in for a certain moment. Sometimes I want to see a graph, but right now I'm feeling like I want to show it in a number. So then let's display the channel. We're going to look for gear. Boom. We have it. Oh, that's really small. So that's showing 4th gear, but I want to display it differently. Fonts. Let's go ahead and change that. Probably going to be bigger than that. How about 20? Would that be nicer? Ooh, still too small. It's going to have to be like 48. Okay, that's a lot more decent. I would also like it for it to display what the title is. So let's show title, and it's called gear, but gear selected. Okay, great. Color bands, it's possible to change it. Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with Motec. Why not? Let's say that it is going to be red. And minimum, maximum, visible. Sure. Let's see what that does. Am I ever in first gear? Yeah, so you see? Now, anytime that it had a little bit of a math, but that this number being displayed is between 0 and 1, it'll flash red. So it'll flash red if I ever come out of gear. Like, you can see that there's a moment there where maybe the car's in the clutch is in and it's hitting neutral between gear shifts or something. So it flashes red. That could be like a warning for somebody for something. Let's go ahead and move this now. See, there's the title of it. Moving things in iRacing, in Motec, is not, you can't just pick up the window and move it. You kind of have to drag it about. On version of Motec 1.1, that works a little bit better, but sometimes you can pick it up and move it, but sometimes you still have to drag it around, but you can still see that you can move things pretty efficiently. So now let's go back to lap 5. So we have our gear. What about gauges? What about if I wanted to show fuel or something like that? Let's add a fuel gauge. Fuel pressure, fuel level. That sounds good. Properties, okay, good. Display, we'll probably have to change that. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. And then color bands. Again, let's put something. Let's make this thing go red when it gets below, I don't know, 15. I don't know what units we're in right now. Cool. So now we're showing the fuel level, and it shows the number. I like the size of it. We're going to move it off to the corner. But you'll notice there's a couple little things about it that I don't like. The precision of it. It's got like a lot of numbers of precision. That's completely nonsense. Let's go ahead and change that. How do you make adjustments to it? You go to, you don't go to properties. What you need to do is go to channel properties. There we go. There's different ways that you can get to channel properties. This is the property of the actual channel itself. You can do that to any channel that you want. It's called fuel level. It shows you the display units. I'm going to go ahead and use US gallons, decimals, places, let's go ahead and just use one. And I don't like yellow, I want it to be green. And that is great. I think we're done. Boom. So now you see that it displays red. Let's go ahead and change that, edit it to when there's only about 2 gallons. And press, all right. It sets the minimums. So let's go ahead and change the property again. You'll notice that, where is that? Scaling, manual, 0 to, I don't know what the limit is, but let's say 20. So this is gonna set your minimum and your maximum. Boom. So now, before I was setting, basically in the run, there was a maximum fuel that I had and a minimum fuel that I had, and it thinks that those are the limits of fuel that you can have. But now I manually forced it to be between 0 and 20, so it'll display the fuel level how I would like it to. And now we fix it, and now it looks very nice. Like, same thing here, steering wheel angle. I can right click on it, and I can go to channel properties. And I don't like when my steering angle is blue. I like it to be orange. And similar thing with the precision. We don't need that level of precision, 1 decimal. So with Motec, you have to kind of like massage it and set it up to be exactly the way that you want it to be. You have to make all these changes, change the precision on all these things, because it's kind of like annoying to look at that many decimal places. It's kind of pointless. So I like to change it like so that it all displays a lot nicer. Last thing, let's see, what else would I want to see? Well, maybe, you know what's also useful? The scatter plot showing a G circle or a friction circle. So how do we do that? Let's say add. The friction circle is a combination of your lateral and longitudinal acceleration. So again, G force. We're gonna add, so the y-axis should be the long, and then the x-axis is right here. We're gonna add an x-axis, that's the lateral G, and we're going to look at the colors, that's fine, display, show title, friction circle. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, all right, well, that's a good place to start, but let's go ahead and do some more editing. You can see there's a couple different options. You can see points and tread line points. How big are the dots? Are they squares? Are they circles? Are they points? So that kind of like changes how it displays. I guess I like the circles and I like them large maybe. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, but we're gonna actually shrink this display down. So let's go ahead and get it to around the size that we're actually gonna use. Now the friction circle, if it's a circle, you want it to be kind of circular, and it won't ever look like a circle if you have the screen kind of stretched out. So this is a case where you may want to actually get something on your screen to measure the actual square to make sure that you actually have a square. But somewhere around there, let's say it kind of looks like a square to me. And then you're going to have to make some adjustments to the channel properties, because they also need to display the correct limits. Like here you see 1.8, minus 1.8 to 1.8, but then the longitudinal G's is minus 1.4 to 1.4 on the positive side. So that's also not going to let you see a circle. That's going to make it look a little bit oblong. So then the way that you do that is that you go to channel properties and scaling mode. Again, you have to change it. So it's manual right now. We're going to go minus 1.5 and positive 1.5. And that's the lateral. And then the longitudinal will do the same thing. And we'll go minus 1.5 to 1.5. And now that looks a little bit better. Well, the problem is that now it's getting cut off. So we actually need to increase it to maybe 2. Negative 2. Positive 2. Oh, pulling a lot of G's. Okay, fine, 2.5. minus 2.5, 2.5. Yeah, there we go. Now we're getting there. And this one also 2, 2. Okay, so now we have it, and it's looking a lot better. You can see this is not exactly a circle, but I'm getting it to be display as best as I can, and to look as much of a square. If this is a square, then then you can actually assume that this should be more and more circular. That's our friction circle. That is a nice piece of data to have if you have a one-stop shop of data. What else would I want to see? Let's see what else. That's really all I care about. Let's see, maybe a rainbow track. I want to get more of a visual of where my breakpoints are and how my trail braking actually looks. So let's look for brake pedal position again, and this is going to show you how hard you're braking. And let's go ahead and change this to manual, and then we'll make an adjustment to the colors, because when I'm off the brake entirely, I want it to display white. Boom. Okay, so now we have a track map. It looks pretty cool, and you can see how deep into the corner you're going and carrying the brakes. Maybe that's some useful information for you, maybe not. Maybe I want to make this a little bit larger. I can actually get away with shrinking it this way and then opening up this one just a little bit. Okay, so now we have our screen set up the way that I feel I want to. Now I have a lot of information just in one screen. And let's go ahead and do some analysis and look at it. Well, the first thing I'm going to look at is corner by corner, looking at this friction circle. So let's look at turn 1. Well, that's not so good. See, the way that the G meter kind of like very linearly like shoots off, like kind of like a straight line. That is not really ideal. It really should be a little bit more full down here. So that's clearly an area that I could work on. Let's actually look at the braking. You can see that I hit a peak here, and then I sharply came off of the brakes and started trailing a little bit, but that's before I turned in. And you can see this is the cursor showing you where you are in G meter. Okay, I mean, if you watch both and you see where you are, like we apply brakes, now we're at peak brake, we're also at peak negative G, and now I start releasing, so now we were around 2.8 Gs. Our peak was negative 2, and then as I reduce, now we're like at 1.5 Gs and bouncing around into 1.5 Gs, and then I start turning in and releasing more brake, but it was just all very linear. Well, what could I have done better? Realistically, I think I was getting off of the brake a little bit too quickly as I'm turning in, holding a little bit more brake and blending that a little bit more nicely would have been better. It also could be the case where maybe we need to see if there was any lockup, but since it's a Mercedes and it has ABS, there shouldn't be any wheel lockup. So maybe this drop in brake pressure shouldn't necessarily be there. And maybe it's because I felt like I braked a little bit too early, and then I released the brake, and I'm carrying a little bit more speed, and then I don't really have adequate brake pressure. But you can see that there's a little bit of a room for improvement here. At least I got on the throttle nice and strong, and the exit seems to have been a good one. The throttle doesn't come off again, so you stay flat. That looks okay. So let's go ahead and go to the next corner, the bus stop chicane. What does that look like? Okay, well, a little bit rounder and fuller under braking, so that looks pretty good. I did a little bit better job of blending my steering and my braking. And the throttle application, a little bit hesitant, but that's okay. I mean, that's the way that the bus stop is. You can see here, you know, how deep or how far into the brake zone I carry the brakes. So not too far. Goes the car gets kind of loose through there, so then you have to kind of go back to maintenance throttle. So that's kind of what that is. Instantly I'm back on throttle a little bit, trying to get a little bit of weight transfer to the rear of the car for stability. We go through the following turn. Okay, now let's go to this turn. iRacing is calling it turn 6. Okay, now I can see a lot. I can see a big difference here. Light brake pressure. You can see the friction circle a lot more full, a lot more circular. That looks like, you know, a quarter circle right there. So I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. Not a lot of brake pressure. Just went down to 1.5 Gs and kind of stayed there, reduced the brake pressure a bit and then increased it again. And then you can see I'm carrying a lot of brake pressure. I'm around 40 or 35% brake, but my steering angle is at 32 degrees. And that's how I'm filling in this part of the G circle here. Like in the other case, I feel like I had a lot less brake pressure going into turn 1. And we're talking about small differences. That doesn't mean hold the brake hard going into the turn. That means a little bit more would have been a little bit more helpful. But it may have been a case where I also, more often than not, when I see the G meter shoot straight across from the negative and go linearly over to maximum lateral G, it's probably because you're braking just a bit too early and could have been just braking a little bit later and carrying the brakes deeper into the corner. The release is good, nice and smooth, and gradually transitioning to maximum lateral G. The steering trace also looks very nice and smooth, and then bang, hard on the throttle. Very nice corner. So I'm happy with the way that turn 6 went. Also, I want to mention something. You'll notice that if you look at the y-axis, the display on it is in minutes and seconds. So right now we're displaying data versus time. And when you're comparing data, you don't want to do that. You want to change that. So that's the hotkey is F9, but you'll see, and now it changes it to meters. And the reason why is now, let's say if we want to compare laps. And that's my best lap is lap 5. Let's say that we want to compare it to lap 2. That was a good lap 2. Well, let's see what the difference is. So this is distance. When you look at it in time base, now it looks like as if I was braking earlier than the other, but that's because it's based on time. So I must have been further ahead, which is why I braked earlier in time, because I'm in a different physical place. You definitely want to change that to distance, and you can see that the brake point is actually identical for the most part. Brake pressure was not, and you can see which turn I actually did better. So now we're looking at turn 7, and they're not too bad. It's decently circular, but it kind of shoots off across again. The brake point was the same. Brake pressure, the peak pressure was not the same for both laps. And you can see meddling with the throttle. It seems like I was able to get on the throttle harder. Let's move this down a little bit. Let's look at our corrected speed. In the lap 2, which is the black trace, you can see it seems like I slowed down the car faster because I was holding more brake. So you can see that there's a little bit of a difference here where the black trace is getting a little bit losing more speed, but then I was releasing the brake faster, and here like I'm holding less brake and less brake. So then our speeds are matching each other now. We're both at 123.3 kilometers per hour. And then who goes to throttle faster? Well, the green trace got on the throttle sooner, but then had to get off of it. And you can see the black trace didn't have to get off on that corner. So maybe just waiting a little bit longer allowed me to kind of stay on the throttle. And because I didn't lift there, you can see that the green trace actually goes to full throttle sooner. But let's see what happens. So now the black trace is ahead on speed. It looks like going to full throttle sooner is going to end up winning. 174, 178. So right there, the difference is already 1.2 kilometers per hour. If you don't want to see it in kilometers, right click, channel properties, units. What do you want? Miles per hour? Okay, let's go miles per hour then. Great. So now we're in MPH, and by the time that we get to the next corner and it's time to hit the brakes, the difference is just 0.4 miles per hour. So getting on the throttle, full throttle sooner, ended up paying off at the end. So let's look at this one. That looks pretty decent too. Hard on the brakes, braked at the same place, but later in the run it seems like I was using a little less brake pressure, but carrying it a little bit deeper. Definitely got on the throttle very nice and hard. And full throttle. Let's see what our speeds are at the end of the straightaway. Seems like the black trace was winning on this one. Was able to get to throttle. Well, you look at the apex speed and the minimum speed, there's a huge difference, 6 miles per hour, 6.5. It's a big difference. Why? Let's see. The difference is here. You can see where I started coming off the brakes, where the red trace is holding onto the brakes a lot deeper into the corner. That slowed down the car a lot more. Basically, maybe overslowing it, but then obviously I was able to get out of the throttle sooner. So it's arguable if that's not. It was better actually to hold the throttle a little bit, hold the brake a little bit longer, and then get on the throttle harder. So I kind of stopped and did a little bit of a stop and go with the car there, but then again, at the end of the straightaway, both of them had about the same speed. So actually, this is a case where we actually need to compare the time delta. So then you go here and show variance. The hotkey is F3, and now you can see the gap. The only way that this variance stuff works is only if you're using the comparison lap, this with the little 0. So this is your reference lap. This is the lap that you have selected. Then you have this option, but you can only ever select one. Or if you don't want to do that, you can select here and you can select multiple laps. So then it'll show the, actually it shows the variance anyway. Yeah, I don't think it used to do that. That's interesting. But anyway, you can see how this dotted line is the reference lap. That's our fastest lap, and you can see where most of those laps, boom, like right up until the bus stop, they were around the same place. And then maybe, well, errors with the bus stop is one place where I was losing a lot of time, and then you can see other places where, time is being lost. Is time ever being gained? Well, let's look at what turn were we analyzing. We're looking at this one, turn 8. So let's look at turn 8 again. But let's turn that off and go back to the way that we were looking at it. We were comparing lap 2. So going into a turn, lap 2 was 0.28 seconds slower. So we were 0.28 behind going into the braking, and now you can see that the reference lap is losing speed. Well, we definitely gained some time. So it was 0.28, and then by the end of the straightaway, it was 0.13. So 0.28 to 0.13 almost cut the gap in half in that corner. So clearly that was more of a mistake. The better way of handling this corner would have been that way, which is to release a little bit sooner, and I was able to carry more speed in the center. So the minimum speed in the corner should have been a little bit faster. Yes, I was able to get to throttle harder, but the problem is that I lost too much speed there. So it was indeed not faster, and I lost a lot of time actually there. But you can see then going into the next corner, now it starts going back the other way. Why? Well, I braked a little bit earlier on lap 2, on lap 5 I braked a little bit later. Everything else seems pretty close between the two, and then I was able to get on the throttle a little bit smoother, more consistently, and go to full throttle sooner. So then, boom, look at that, the gap starts shooting. Now we're back up to where we were, 0.28, 2.5, 2.6, 2.8, and losing time. So we did some analysis. We can make some adjustments on our braking. What did we see? We saw that in turn 1, there's some improvements that could be made there. We also saw that in turn, what turn was that? Turn 8, holding a little bit higher minimum speed is good. Here you can see the overview, like big places where there's a gap in our speeds on the minimums. So that's basically 2 places, turn 8 and then also turn 4, which is the bus stop. I lost a lot of time on the bus stop, and you can see it here on the delta as well. So we just did some driving analysis. You can see some differences in the steering and everything, whether or not the car's oversteering or understeering. Cool. Now let's look at some other stuff. Okay, so now we went over to a different worksheet called section times. In this worksheet, you'll see, let's go ahead and set this up by, make a brand new one, because let's say that you wanted to make one and it wasn't given to you. How do you get there? Well, it's a channel report, it's a time report. What are we looking at? Selected laps, selected outing. Selected laps means that you're gonna pick the laps that you want, and you're gonna compare those. Selected outings means all of the laps that are gonna be shown, and they're all gonna be compared. That looks exactly how you want it to be, but you could do some tricks in here. I've never really played with it, except for once maybe. And then we'll just leave it like that. Press OK. So you see, all you need to do is select one. Here it shows all the laps, lap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it shows you the way that Motec is breaking up the racetrack. So it's breaking it up into all these little sections, and then it's going to show you your optimal. So the baby blue is the best time that you had. So say turn 2. On lap 2 was the fastest time, 2.394 seconds. And it will add all those up, and then this eclectic shows you the best, the optimal lap that could have been possible if you put those together. Rolling minimum means that if you didn't have the start finish where it was, but then maybe the end of one lap was great and the beginning of another lap was great, but then you didn't finish it. If you blended those 2 laps together and made a lap out of it, what it would have been. So my rolling minimum was a 46.4. My best actual lap was a 46.5, almost a 46.6. So that's what the rolling minimum is. It's a very realistic lap, where this eclectic is not, because it's easy to trick this or make an unrealistic lap, because you could easily just blow a corner and maybe get the best time through a certain turn. But if the segment is too short, you could also end up hurting yourself for the next one, where it would actually wreck the lap. But as long as you got a good time in that little bit of a section, you have a good lap there. So it's not the best way of doing it. How can we get a little bit better results? Well, it's broken. The track is being broken up into too many sections, so that's not ideal. Maybe we want to break it up into our own sections. Well, let's go ahead and edit that. So the track editor, if you ever have any issue with the track and it looking funny, you can go ahead and go to track editor and generate track, and then it'll go through it again. You can pick the lap that you want to generate from. It uses a lap that it'll pick, usually your best one, and it'll generate the racetrack from that. You have a couple little bits of information. It generates it off of your lateral G's sensor, and there you go. So I mean, obviously that looks good to me, but we want to break up the track differently. So let's go ahead and make a new category, and we're going to call it sectors. And boom. Okay, so now we have a new category called sectors, and we're just going to break up the track into 4 simple sectors. And we're going to get a little bit better of an idea of what's realistic. So right now we have sector 1. Sector 1. Okay, sector 1, you have to press enter. Sector 1, we're going to go from turn 1, let's say, to, yeah, that looks right. So sector 1 is just going to be turn 1 and the S's. Then that means sector 2 is the rest of this, but we're going to have to split this section up so that we have a good proper sector 2. We're going to press enter. Sector 2 is going to be from, we're going to include the bus stop chicane, and then we're going to go after that carousel turn, and then sector 3, we're going to split that one up into another one as well. Sector 3, enter. That one is going to be just those turns, and then finally sector 4 will just be that. Obviously you can do whatever you want. So now we have the track broken up in a different way. This is still showing the same thing because it's not going to change what it shows, but we just make a new one. What was it called? A time report? Yeah, time report. And then we go and what are we looking at? So before I was looking at track sections, we're going to look at sectors. And we're going to do the selected outing again. And now we're displaying the same thing, but differently. Now we're just showing the sectors that we want. And let's compare the results. The eclectic before was a 46.0, and now it's a 46.4. And the rolling minimum, 46.4, 46.4, that's still about the same. And that shouldn't change because it covers the entire lap. It just moves the start-finish line. But your ideal lap, just taking from 4 sectors versus, it looks like 20, becomes a lot more attainable. So now you can see that my best lap was a 46.5, almost a 46.6, and my best possible, it says, would have been a 46.4 and a half. So that's a little bit nicer, and I like the way that's being displayed a little bit better. So that's good information to have. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move to something else. Let's look at working on setups.